Hi, my name is Ilze Be, or Ilze as they say it in Latvian, because I am a Latvian. I come from Latvia, but I live in the United States. Currently, I live in the state of North Carolina, in the city of Raleigh.
Sveika, Ilze.
Sveika, Mara!
Or
Baklai!
hello.
Hello!
How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. How about yourself?
I am doing well. I am very happy that summer is finally here. You've probably had it a bit longer than we have.
Yes, right now it looks cloudy outside, but in North Carolina, it's actually a good thing because it's not very hot. It's just perfect.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us. And you're the first interview we've had in a little while who's joining us from the other side of the ocean and talking back to us here in Latvia. And it'll be really interesting to hear a little bit more about you. So, why don't you start by telling us about where you're from and the early part of your life?
Well, thank you for having me. Thanks a lot. Yes, I am from Latvia, as I already said in the intro. I come from the town of Valmiera, which is North Vidzeme region. Yeah, and I live in the United States. I've been here for a little more than 8 years, although I started traveling to the US 10 years ago to get adjusted and to figure out if I want to stay here and get married to my husband. That's why I am here. Yes, and yeah, I lived around Valmiera for most of my life, except the last years before I moved. I lived in Sigulda about the early part of my life. I've
Or
had
just how would you describe the first place that shaped you?
mm,
What is that place like? Meaning for people who have never even been there, what does it look like? How big is it? What are people like there?
mm. Um, yeah, this is very interesting when I think about it because what shapes us or who shape us, I really think it's the family that shapes us even more than the country, more than the society. And the family also with their background and all the traumas or whatever they have
Mhm.
been through, and then what they try to give to their children. That's really what shaped me. My mother, my father, and then my little sister as well, because I am the older sister. We are two children in the family, two daughters. Yeah, so I was born. I started living in the countryside. There's a little village called Branguli. That's where I lived, and I really don't remember a lot about other people or anything. I remember though walks with my family, with my mother, and I don't know if you want to hear about that or not, but yeah, because you are interested in the culture. But I think that those things really also shaped me. I really love the nature. It's a very, very picturesque place where we lived.
Mhm.
You could actually walk from Valmiera to Branguli if you like to hike and walk a lot, which I do. And those walks, and I remember once my mother is surprised that I remember this, but I remember how I was running on a path in the woods, and I rolled downhill and I fell in a pond.
Mm.
And and my and yeah, and I remember that I was underwater and I saw the water lilies and maybe even, I don't know, ducks, I don't know what, but I remember those water lilies and water, and the sun through the water all looked so bright, and I was not scared at all. It just looked so cool. But my mother, of course, was afraid that I would drown. So for them, it was it was something, really scary, a scary experience for me. For me, it stays in my memory till today, and I remember that. So I almost drowned, but in my life, I have saved my sister from drowning, which happened later. So there's something related with water
Wow.
in my family, and uh, my father's mother unfortunately drowned saving her daughter.
Oh.
My um, br- um, father's sister, she got saved, but the mother drowned in the Daugava River. So yeah, that is something strange. And my sister now has 4 children, and her youngest, I think, her son was drowning, and her daughter saved him. So there's, yeah, something going on, and I don't know if that shapes us, but just family is the most important thing in my life that has shaped me. And only later, when I started to go to school, and then when I started processing things, then I think I paid more attention to what's going on around in the world.
Mhm. Mhm. Um, any other stories that you have about your family that you think particularly influences you as you've reflected back on your family?
Yes, I think so. Like I said, I was the oldest daughter, and I think that when my sister was born, I was traumatized. I was thrown off the throne, and I think that determines who I am in this life, because I think I have been constantly proving myself, constantly trying to be noticed, because I felt like I was not noticed. My little sister was in the center of attention when she was born. She's not even 3 years younger, 2.5. And yeah, since then, yeah, my life changed. Yeah.
I'm an older sister of 2 siblings as well, so I can identify somewhat with what you're saying. Yeah, and so you said you only really started to think about the bigger worlds later. What were those circumstances where you kind of came out of the shell of your family unit and started to realize, okay, there's other things out here?
Yeah, and I'm probably thinking more psychology because I work as a life coach, and you're probably thinking more culturally and what your audience wants to hear. But again, I think I'll answer using these memories about my family. So I remember that I remember another incident in my life where my sister, as a younger child, she was. I don't know if the word is more spoiled or what, but when she wanted something, she would fall on the floor or on the ground, and she would cry, and she would insist that she wants that thing. And I remember how my mother used this technique or strategy to shame her. She said, "Oh, it looks so ugly. Look, everybody's looking at you and laughing. Oh, so ugly. Don't do that." And what effect it had, it had the effect on me, because I was thinking, "Oh my goodness, everybody is looking at her and everybody will be laughing." But my sister didn't, care. She didn't. However, that affected me so deeply that I got so self-aware and conscious, and I didn't want to speak and talk. And I remember when I started school, and a teacher would ask questions in the classroom, and my classmates would raise their hands and want to answer. And sometimes when they said something and others laughed, I thought that was the most horrific thing. And I was wondering, why do they even sign up to talk, because everybody's laughing. For me, this laughing was the worst thing that can happen to you. Yeah, this is, and I really had to process this later in life. Even most of all, I have been consciously thinking about this now here, living in the United States, where I
Mhm.
try to do public speaking. Yes, but yeah, that traumatized me, and I think at that time I didn't understand that my parents, where my mother was actually influenced by the society in which she grew up and lived. In the Soviet times, it was really the culture of ridicule and humiliation of people, and she subconsciously or unconsciously used that, not even knowing that, and see how that affects actually me in my life until nowadays, where I'm working through this.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting, and I think you share your stories as you share them because even though these conversations tend or have come out of this wish to share about cultures and people who are living outside or have lived outside of their culture, you're right that we're very influenced by a number of factors in who we are. Um, and it's for me, it's been the almost the living somewhere new has been a catalyst to even more introspection and even more self-awareness because you're suddenly in this vulnerable state of everything being new again. So however you want to answer the questions is great because everyone's experience is unique in that. And do you have thoughts or memories from when you transition from this small town life to thinking about or traveling away from there, seeing perhaps different places in Latvia? Um, Basically, the question being, how did you get to the point where you even started to consider that maybe you would live outside of Latvia?
It's actually easy for me to answer. It's very
Oh,
easy for me to answer. Yes, the school year in Latvia was organized so that we had all summer months free from school. So 3 summer months, and my parents had to work. So therefore, my mother took us to her mother's to another town in Latvia, another beautiful town, Staicele, where she basically dumped us and we had to stay there with my grandmother, and she was a retired teacher. uh, and she had migraines at that time. She couldn't tolerate noise, and we I think that they didn't have medicine, or she medical help was not available to her, I think, to handle that. So she was really suffering. Therefore she was nervous when she heard noise, and she didn't allow us to play loudly, my sister and myself. She wanted everything to be quiet. And but she had a lot of books at home. She had a huge library, and I really really loved reading. I would read all kinds of adult, like books for adults. At a very young age I started reading like thick novels, and just basically one by one, because she had classics and everything, translations, and Latvian classics. And I was a big reader, and I always read books about either love stories, romance, or about traveling other countries. So that conjured in my imagination places and where I would eventually want to go. However, my sister was very different. We are very different human beings. She always read books about animals. She really likes animals, and it's very interesting that I'm well traveled. And I think that's because of the books that I read throughout the summers. Because year after year, I was left in that countryside with my grandmother at her house. And my sister and her husband, they own a big farm, and they have animals, cattle.
mhm. So
And
she
yeah,
was influenced by those books.
right. Yes.
How interesting. And so when did you actually start traveling outside of Latvia?
As soon as it was possible, but also before it was like really possible to get outside of the Soviet Union, so to say, we could still travel within the limits of the Soviet Union. So my parents also tried to take us to places within their means and limits. And yeah, I what I remember the earliest. I don't know which was the earliest, but I've been to Moscow. I've been to St. Petersburg. At that time, it was Leningrad. I've been to the Ukraine, to the places where you wouldn't go today. I've been to, yeah, of course, Estonia, Lithuania, many times. That was also something that probably made me want to travel even more. The first time I traveled outside of the Soviet Union was with my dance group. I was in a dance group, and we went to, I think that was at that time it was called Czechoslovakia. So we went to both countries, actually, Czech Republic and Slovakia. I think I was 16 at that time, and also I was a part of school drama uh, groups, like theater group of performers, and we went to Georgia, not Georgia in the United States, but Georgia in
The
Europe,
country,
European
yeah.
Georgia. That was a long trip. We actually traveled on the bus by bus, and I think 2,000 kilometers, which was,
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, quite
A big
difficult, but
long road
was
trip.
it was yeah, it was something that I still also, yeah, have in hold in my memories. It was great. Yeah. And then yeah, other places. Yeah.
And so what were the circumstances that brought you from loving to travel and traveling in different places to actually living somewhere outside of the place you had grown up?
The circumstances. It's interesting how you phrase the question. I think I've always been like that. That I didn't want to travel as a tourist.
Mm,
Now, when you ask this to me, I actually start figuring this out. Maybe I knew it, but I didn't. I never wanted to be there as a tourist. I wanted to merge, to pretend that I lived there. So yes, I what was the circumstance? For the first time, maybe it was when we went again with the dance group to Moscow. I've been to Moscow several times, but that one time we stayed there for more than 40 days. I think we prepared for some either Olympic Games, or there was some festival. I think big festival, and we had to perform on a big stadium. We had to rehearse there daily, so we stayed in a dorm, and I started almost like I felt like I knew Moscow so well. I knew what subway to take to get to the places where I wanted to get. It was weird how I could feel comfortable in that huge, huge city. Yes. So, and what I've also started doing is I always, before I traveled somewhere, I try to learn the language, at least so that I can say the basic phrases, and maybe say thank you and please and can you, whatever, tell me this or that, or yes, or order simple things in a gas station, for instance.
yeah. And when and how did you end up in the United States?
Yes, I already mentioned that I'm here because I fell in love with somebody who's an American citizen. Yeah, that's really the reason. But this I had been to the United States before, again with the dance group for the first time. We came to the U.S. and we traveled, toured around. We went to Canada as well, but at that time I don't think I would be ready to stay here. I have a story where I'm telling my audiences that I actually had a plan to flee the Soviet Union, and it was in the back of my mind. But then, even then, at that time, I realized that it would be dangerous for the people who I would leave behind, my parents, my
Hmm.
family. So I didn't take that steps. Yeah, and it's good. Everything's worked out the way it should have. Yes.
Yeah. You talked about when you traveled wanting to mm, integrate into the local society in some ways. What are some of the memories you have around the start of your time in the United States? So you moved there, you knew that you were going to be staying there. What were some of the experiences you had or things you tried that were part of that adjustment period?
Hmm. That's a difficult question to answer for the reason that I'd say it's been gradual process, and I don't know if I could say that it has been smooth. I have had a lot of difficulties, but see, I already had I knew more or less what to expect, and at the same time I thought that I knew what to expect and I didn't. That's the funniest thing. I had been here years before, but then I started traveling to this place and noticing and things and thinking that I already know things and that I can figure things out. Plus, I had been working as a translator in translation industry in Europe, working with people from many other countries, mostly from European countries, but not only. So I thought that I can understand and get adjusted easily, but Europe is so different. I didn't realize how different it is. And that's also because of the culture, but the culture probably in the way that people don't think of the culture of law, the culture of economy, that is culture too.
Hmm.
So that is actually how I think. The first things, as soon as I got the green card, because at the beginning you get the green card and then later you get citizenship. As soon as I got the green card, the first thing that I did was I took two courses. One was in accounting, although I had studied economy. I had studied accounting before. I took bookkeeping, actually bookkeeping course for certified bookkeepers because I wanted to understand in depth how the processes are carried out here in this country, specifically about payrolls and law. And I took a course for paralegals to understand how legal system is built, because it's built so very differently than how it is in the United States. So these things help me to understand the culture. I don't know, not everybody thinks like that, but that's how I think, the fundamentals. And then later, the third thing that I think that helps to understand the culture is to understand real estate. And I got certified as a real estate broker as well, because that is also so very different, but from how it is organized in Latvia. But homes is something that is so essential for everyone, because we all live somewhere and we build our lives around our homes, houses, or flats, or whatever.
Hmm. Hmm. Do you have any memories of some of those things that you expected to be one way and were different, or things that stood out that were different than you expected?
I think that what we expect is what we have experienced. So we don't even know that we expect that, but something that we are used to is something that we expect. And when it turns out to be different, then we are simply surprised and often frustrated as well, because we move to another place and we think that okay, I'm going to do this because we have some strategy behind that we have built over the years. Then we come into that situation, it works totally differently. But there are little stories, that just funny stories. One, you know there are hundreds of stories. One is about the banking system, and like the checking accounts. Mara, how in Latvia nobody uses checks.
No.
And yeah, for me, it was the thing that I couldn't get used to. I was thinking, why do people still use check? Like, why do we? And, and that when I was first getting my bank account, and they asked me, like, what kind of account I want, like checking account or whatever. And I was thinking, no, I don't need a checking account. But that's the basic account that you actually need.
Mhm.
But I don't need checks. Why do I need checks? Why can't I do everything online? Or yeah, that. And then, for instance, there's that, I don't I don't even know how you call it, but when Americans like to drive, everything is drive through. Everything, you get coffee. You don't make coffee at home. Well, not everybody, but you would get in the car and drive to a coffee place, and before you go to work, you get your coffee and drive through, and then drive to the work and drink your coffee or whatever, or get food. And so they do the banking the same way. And when I first saw that capsule where you put your stuff in and then it travels over to to the teller, that was the weirdest thing for me. And because I thought of myself as an established business owner, um, I felt intimidated that there's something that I don't know how to handle. And I remember that it took a lot of courage for me for the first time to actually use that thing. I parked the car at the parking lot and I watched how other people did that before I actually attempted to go to that, little stand and say whatever I wanted to say and use that thing. And I imagine that people in Latvia or wherever, you don't even know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, although I was in a Latvian hospital the other day and surprisingly saw them they were using this as a system to send from one hospital building to another. And they even had a little keypad where they could punch in where it needed to go. And I was like, wow, this is the first time I've seen one of these here, but definitely not in the banks.
Yeah.
Definitely not not anywhere. Even the idea of cash deposits and that type of thing is very different here. Everything at this point, even more than when I was younger, is all digital. You wave a card, you wave a phone, and it's done. And nothing faster or longer than that. Um,
Yeah, see, that's the thing, that if you're asking me now about Latvia, I don't even know Latvia right now because it changes so quickly. And I haven't been to Latvia for 3 years, and I can imagine how it has changed. And when I was there last time, I really didn't. I don't think I even went to Riga. Maybe I did, but maybe for a day or two, and that's not enough to really observe and notice the changes and everything. So I am more American right now, really. Yeah.
that's an interesting point. So I think when I first moved, one of the things I realized, and you made this point earlier about how you don't even realize what you know or what has influenced you until you come up against something different. And so um are there things, or were there things when you first came to the United States that you never realized were Latvian or European until you encountered, oh, I do this in this particular way, and people here do it differently. Or even oppositely, are there particular things now with saying that you feel more American? How would you define that?
Mm. Uh, Probably, yes. The way people dress. And again, that I understand because of the environment. That's why. Because in Europe, Europe is older, of course, right? And when the towns and cities were built, the streets were narrower, everything was closer. So people are used to walking more. Whereas in America, they started building in open fields, so to say, cities. So they already planned having wider streets and then having shopping centers, all like all the stores together, and then people would live in neighborhoods somewhere else. So for Americans, it makes sense to if they want to um, do, I don't know, some exercise, go for a walk, they get in their jogging clothes or whatever, and then they drive to the place wherever they want to jog, in a park or somewhere, and park their car and go and start jogging. Whereas if they want to go to do something in the city, they, again, they dress differently. For Europeans, they would dress so that you can do everything, so to say, but you know that you always will be, you will be seen because you would walk on the street, but then you know, you might also do something else, and you don't dress, I think, so casually as Americans would dress casually because they know that they're going to work out or whatever. That's one thing. That it's really not the choice, more like how, like, either, you know, they say that Americans don't know how to dress. That's not, of course, true. But that's really the environment that affects us. um, the other thing, this is this, I don't know why this has, I haven't put enough thought about thinking about it, but why Americans use so much ice. And everybody points that out. I don't. I do this differently. I don't drink typically uh, water or juices with ice. Yeah, that's the European thing that I do. I What I do, what else I do differently. I Again, yeah, you caught me at this question. There probably are a lot of things, but okay, the other part of the question was, that I mentioned that I'm more American right now, and what that means. What it means is, what I noticed it is in communication with Latvians, that when I try to explain things, I notice that I have become different. And sometimes when I think of Latvians, now I expect them to be like Americans. And when they are not, then, you know, I notice, or I get frustrated, or whatever. Yes,
Just that
that's
the
what it means.
communication pattern is different.
Right. Yes. And that I understand is also comes from the history, probably, how uh, they are still affected from their history. See, I'm using the word they, talking about Latvians or Europeans. I already distinguish this in my language. And I think Americans more like we or us now, because I notice those differences. Yes.
Well, I think a very interesting illustration of your feet between two different places is your name, and the fact that you introduced yourself as both Ilze and Ilze Be. Do you want to talk a little bit about the origin of that dichotomy?
Sure. Yes. Well, the reason why I call myself Ilze is that my husband calls and has always called me Ilze because he simply thought that that's the proper way of pronouncing my name because it ends in E, and he would logically assume that it's Ilze. I don't know if it's logical or not, but for him, it is. And that's how I started calling myself because it just sounded cute and endearing. I liked the sound of yeah of that, of my name being pronounced like that. Plus, I really don't like my name being pronounced as Ilza with an ending ah. I just hate it, and I know that Americans have hard time to accept that it's Ilze. It's just difficult, I've noticed. So for me, it's better to be Ilze than Ilza. And I think that is because when I lived in Latvia in the Soviet times, for Russians, it was also difficult to accept that a name can end in E or E. And they pronounced my name Ilza, and I just hated it. I hated it so much, and I think that's why I don't like it. That's the association. I didn't like it. Um, uh, More about why Ilze Be. So my first name, so I call myself Ilze because my husband started calling me that. But then I don't have a middle name at that time. When I was born, it was just not typically. We didn't have middle names. Maybe there were parents who gave middle names, but typically it wasn't in style or fashion or whatever. I don't know the system. I don't even know. But here, uh, when I was offered, when I was applying for American citizenship, I was offered to change my name, and I was thinking, why not to give myself the middle name? And why I call myself Ilze B is because my surname starts with B, Berzinya or Berzina. Here again, how they pronounce it. But I've been divorced formerly, and this is not my original surname. This is my ex-husband's surname. So um, sometimes at the beginning, especially, I didn't want to emphasize the fact that I have been divorced before. So I didn't want to use always my surname. But I paint. You see, there are a lot of paintings there. And when I sign my paintings, I signed them in my name, but my name is very, very common in Latvian name. So if I signed simply as Ilze, that can be any Ilze. And so I had to add something. I didn't want to add surname, which was not my original surname. So at the beginning, I added the letter B, just the first letter of my surname, and then it developed into BE because I was also self-conscious about how I paint, and I haven't like formally studied painting, and then I told myself, Ilse, just be who you are, and so that's how I left it. It's like a little story. I shape it in various ways when I tell it to my audiences, but really it's when I told myself, Ilse, be who you are, and so that is my logo, my motto: be who you are, and that I'm trying to tell everybody, just be who you are, just relax into who you are. Yeah, that's my formal middle name in my American passport.
That's lovely. I very much like that it's not only your own story, but that you've made it this your real name.
Yes.
Um, and you started to talk a little bit about, or you have mentioned that you speak to audiences.
Hmm.
And I think one of the things that intrigued me, and that one of the reasons that I wanted to interview you is, um, well, a few different things. You've had a couple of projects that have caught my eye over the years, and in the beginning it was you reaching out to people who wanted to learn Latvian, and obviously specifically people who did not know Latvian who wanted to learn Latvian, and then you have actually a fairly well going project called What's Your Latvian Story, where similarly you were reaching out to people, um, not in Latvian to talk about what their connection to Latvia was, and not just people of Latvian descent, but um, but people, anyone who wanted to be connected or was interested. And part of the reason that caught my eye is having grown up in a family where one of my parents was Latvian and one was not. There was always that tension of belonging or not belonging, and how to include people who were interested but not necessarily understanding all of the language or the culture. And it's part of the reason that these interviews are in English. So this is a very long introduction to say that recently I saw that you had posted something about, you know, your newer venture in terms of life coaching, and that you work with people across cultures. And so to me, it seems like a natural progression between the different projects that I've seen you be a part of. But can you tell us a little bit more about what that looked like, that progression looked like for you, and where you're with it now?
That is so true. You have observed it absolutely accurately. That is natural progression. Um, so, and it really goes back to where I come from, and probably even again in my from my childhood, and all the system that I have, lived in, and then how I progressed. My parents, because they both were my father was a complete like orphan when he was 12 when he had lost already both parents, and he had to no, I think he was 12 when he lost his mother and 14 when he lost his father, and he had to start working. So what I'm hinting at is that he had to struggle to survive, really, in terms of like really survival money. And my mother's also history is tough, maybe for another time to tell, but they have come together, and they have both s- really put a lot of effort to survive and provide um, for a wonderful childhood for my sister and I. But I remember that there were these worries, especially my mother always worried about, will we have enough money? So that also influenced me. Although I always felt that we had enough, as a child, you don't know what you lack. You feel comfortable. If you're loved, you feel comfortable. If you have food to eat, you feel comfortable. And I did. But I remember those statements, will we have money? And I also noticed differences that some of my friends, even in those Soviet times, they had more money than my family did. And I always wanted to live better. In those books, I imagined how I could live better, travel. And then I saw my friends, some of them had relatives. I remember particularly one friend had relatives in Germany, and she got that they sent her things that was allowed, like there were things that were allowed to, they were allowed to receive. And some of those were magazines where women were dressed beautifully, and just everybody looked beautiful, glossy in those magazines. So I wanted to live like that. And I was trying to figure out how to look like that, how to live like that. And I think that cultivated entrepreneurship within me, even when I was a child. I organized things. I kind of like had little ventures. I would set up theater performances and invite parents to watch and pay in whatever candy or whatever. Always, tried to do something so that there's something more beautiful, adventurous, something happens. And when Latvia became free, I was first in doing something, having business, and basically, yeah, from the very first years, I've already started doing business. And so economy and things like that, that was something that always attracted me. I wanted to figure things out, how to organize, how to get money, how to live better. But I studied English because I wanted to really communicate with the outside world. And only later, after I had studied English and I already had my first two or even three companies, I don't know, I studied economy. And I have an MBA from Stockholm School of Economics in Riga. But when I came to this country, I I didn't know, I couldn't really make use of it because Americans really they value their schools, their experience in the United States, and that was a big disappointment for me because I had one company that I had built, like that was my last company, what was translation company, and here the translations they are not really needed. They are not really. Spanish was is not the language that I speak, and I I I could have translators, Spanish translators, but nobody would really, not nobody, but it wouldn't probably be lucrative. I didn't see it as lucrative with my experience that I had had and European law and all the systems. I didn't know how to use that. For a while, I kept working for my own company, but then I thought, what's the point? I'm sitting, I'm sitting here in this house staring at the screen, talking to somebody on the other side of the world, and life is going by. And what for? Money as such is not a necessity for me anymore. It's not even interesting for me anymore. So I was trying to figure out what to do with what I have in the circumstances, in the environment that I live in now. And it like it took me a while to figure that out, and then I thought I would go back to the basics, to the very root, and try to do something in this environment using the fundamental things that I have, understanding of the basic economy, the basic structure, how to build a business, learn something new, which was this online business, online marketing, and as a product use something that I feel really comfortable about, which is my native language. I studied linguistics. I understand the structure and the language. I understand the difficulties that English speakers have because of my husband, who has tried to learn Latvian, has had difficulties. So he is actually the best teacher for me because he is so difficult to teach. So anybody can come here. I've seen it all. So if I had maybe very quick student, if he was very quick student, it wouldn't be so beneficial for my students. So that was like my model. That's how I started. And because there are no like bigger communities of people who would stand in line here to learn the Latvian, I had to market over the internet, um, over like globally, really, and that's how I yeah, started communicating with people from basically all continents except yeah, where people don't live. And then only when I started communicating with people, I started thinking deeper. Why do they want to study Latvian? And there are just really very few reasons. One is they want to live in Latvia, and for that, they need to know the language. Sooner or later, they will really realize if they really truly want to live in Latvia, they need to know Latvian in order to feel really comfortable and integrate. You can survive, but I don't think it's fulfilling life to not understand everything. Yeah. So that is one reason. Then usually the biggest force, of course, in our lives is love. Somebody has fallen in love with a Latvian person, and that motivates them. And yeah, and then together they maybe decide to do something about Latvia or communicate with parents or raise their children and teach Latvian to their children. And yeah, why I'm saying that again, um, this sets up the foundation for the need to do something economically. Again, if you want to, yeah, they learn for the reason that they want to use it to create something material, for instance work, work and get money and then buy things that they need or they want. So yeah, I really talk about now money issues. Like, remember how I said my parents lived in scarcity, and now I see that my students actually learn the language because they want to solve the money problems, and it's difficult for people to accept it and to actually verbalize it. And it, they would come up with all kinds of reasons. I'm doing this and that because of that, but really, everybody wants to live better. Everybody wants to learn to earn the money, although even if we deny it, well, not maybe not everybody. There are people who are not really that interested, but I think that if the money was taken away from them, they would reconsider. Yeah. So the coaching, yeah, the coaching is I do life coaching, but the money issues will come up in life coaching always, always, always. And I'm right now in the process of creating actually a program, because I know so well. I've been through the process how to create an online program, and that would be for people who want to start their business from scratch, just like I have started several businesses from scratch, just using my mind and the resources in the environment, or what you have accumulated over the period of your life. You can start business, you can earn money, and you shouldn't be ashamed of actually saying that I want to do this, because money is good. If you can have money and more money than you actually need, you can do so many good things and help other people and contribute to good causes. So yeah, I would like to also shatter those mindset blocks, help to shatter those mindset blocks around money and abundance.
Yeah, I love that. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, what I wanted to say, maybe that's not even for your audience, but for people generally. When I'm stuck and when I don't know how to process, I go back to people. Like I try not to reinvent the bicycle, the wheel, right? And uh, there are thought leaders who have those thoughts that we can use always. And one of them is Tony Robbins. You probably know him, right? And he has talked about six human needs. One is need for security, and then the opposite is also the need for insecurity or variety. When you have security, you eventually get bored and you want variety, because if you are bored all the time, then you get cranky and upset, and you are not satisfied with your life, and then you want to do something of sometimes even stupid things, and then you put yourself in a situation where you are insecure, not insecure, but maybe slightly a dangerous place, but adventurous, because we need adventure. And probably that's because we all need to learn. So then the next level he mentions is need for connection slash love, but also need for significance. And then the higher level, is our need for growth and the need for contribution. And when I work with my clients, and when I try to understand what they really really need, it's typically not what they say they need, because they think of like through layers. And when we peel off those layers, then we come to one of these fundamental needs, why they, like, what actually drives them, why they want what they want, what they think they want. And sometimes they actually want something else than what they think they want. I've always thought that for me, I know that love and connection is one of my basic needs. Tony Robbins says that two are typically stronger than the others. And I think that in the past, maybe I thought that my need was also for the security, but this is like what everybody has, and we have that fear embedded within us. But when I think, I have never really been in a situation where I am totally unsupported. I've always had something that I could, hang on to and get through the tough times. So it's not the security that I need. What that other thing is for me, it's growth. But I always thought that significance is the least important for me. I always thought that like everything else, I really need like think about security, and then I'm adventurous. I really need something adventurous to do something. I always like to grow, and I like to give and to contribute. I thought that significance wasn't important for me, but the latest thought is that actually significance is important for me as well. And I think that when people move to another place, this is actually one of the strongest needs, because I remember when I moved to this place, I suddenly realized that I am nothing. I am a nobody here. Nobody knows me. They have lived all their lives without me, and they can continue, move on without me, and nothing would change in this world, in this town, on this street. And how to, yeah, to find that identity in the new place, how to make a statement that you are here, you are alive, you want to integrate, you want to contribute to this community, maybe. Yeah, think about that significance, and how you can actually satisfy that need. And the way you can satisfy your need, this need, is to really be who you are, because people appreciate uh, learning about uh, something that is different. And sometimes we feel self-conscious. We think that, oh, I need to get adjusted. I need to be like they are, like when you are in Rome, talk like Romans do, or do what Romans do. But people actually appreciate us being different, and that's what I noticed. And that's when I actually reached the comfort zone, started feeling comfortable in this country, when I finally figured that what people like about me is me being different, me being who I am, me having this accent, being a little weird because I have these European experiences. And I think, yeah, if people just took that and yeah, relaxed and understood that that's a good thing, that yeah, I don't know. Was that a
I
useful
think
thought?
I think that's great advice, though. I think using a structure like this to think through that process
Hmm.
is great advice for people who are going through it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that with people, that actually one of the reasons is that, yeah, they feel like they don't belong, but they can belong just because they are who they are.
Hmm.
And we can, if we come from another culture, we can, mm, I'd say we can never completely get away from where we come from. So don't even try. Yeah,
Mm.
embrace what, yeah, what's all there within you.
So, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share?
I would like to say thank you so much, Mara, for inviting me for this conversation. um, I don't have particular final thoughts. I just want to um, celebrate everybody who is interested in the Latvian culture, because Latvianship and Latvianity, or whatever you call it, it's my soul, it's my heart, it's everything. Although I called myself American, Yeah, and I love everybody who's trying to learn more about Latvians and Latvian culture, Latvian history, and I am here to help if you if you need my help. That's it.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing your knowledge and your experience, which is brought a different perspective to these conversations than we've had in the past. So that's wonderful as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you.